Welcome to the Feeling Loudly podcast, a show about human emotion and the way we navigate this life of trials and triggers and treasures with the help of astrology and tarot. I'm your host, Jana. I'm an astrologer, a tarot reader, and an Akashic Records reader, and I'm here to help you do this messy life with as much grace, ease, and pleasure as possible. Hello, friends. Welcome to day 18 of the 22 Days of Tarot. Today is card 17, the Star. The Star is a wonderful card. One of the best. The Star is connected to the sign of Aquarius, and it's almost always a really lovely omen to see the Star. And today I was really looking forward to the Star after a few difficult card days, starting with Death and then Temperance a little easier, and then moving into the Devil and then the Tower. It's just a lot of heavy material that can come up with those cards. And yeah, so I was really eager to move into the Star and see how it would feel. And the Star really delivered in an unexpected ways. My morning got off to kind of a weird start. I was up too late last night, and so I got a late start and just felt kind of off. I jumped onto my phone straight away, which I usually try not to do. Usually try to wait at least an hour to look at my phone in the morning. But I just immediately jumped on, and I was greeted by a comment that surprised me on Threads. A mutual of mine had kind of pressed me on my connection to the Akashic Records and my relationship with it, specifically because of the relationship between the Akashic Records and Theosophy, which, if you're not familiar, I would recommend looking into, because there's a lot of complexity to it, and it's not something that I in any way identify with. But the term the Akashic Records was popularized by Theosophists, which was an occultist movement in the 1800s and early 1900s, I think. And a lot of very problematic characters involved in Theosophy. And I appreciated the question because it's not something that I talk about very often. It just doesn't come up very often, although I have spoken to it a bit before. And so I answered in what I thought was a pretty measured way, and basically explained my relationship to the records and how I wasn't familiar with the deep correlation before getting into the Akashic Records. And then once I learned about it, I stepped back a little bit, but then ultimately returned to my practice because the Akashic Records were not created by Theosophists. That's, again, the sort of whitewashing of a lot of ancient knowledge and ancient technologies and practices, which is super, super common for white people to exploit cultures, especially Eastern cultures and Black cultures, and all sorts of culture, all the cultures, we steal them all. And so I use the term Akashic Records, which was popularized by Theosophists, but the way that I work with the records is very deeply in deep recognition that it's something, a space, an energetic space, and a tool and a practice that has been accessed in countless ways for millennia, probably since the birth of humanity, if not earlier than that. And it was good for me to have that discussion, because I used to be pretty conflict averse in my up until probably my mid-20s. I had a lot of trouble with conflict, and I didn't feel any sting of that with this interaction, even though the comment was kind of strangely charged and out of context and caught me off guard a little bit. But I addressed it in a way that I was proud of, and I was honest and clear, and it started some really helpful conversations with other folks who chimed in with their experiences, and kind of relational experiences when it comes to Reiki, for example, and how a lot of folks have trouble, myself included, connecting with Reiki as a practice, because it feels like it's been packaged, and obviously it has been packaged and monetized and all of that stuff, and whitewashed and all of that. So yeah, anyway, it triggered some good conversations, and I was happy for that. And then the person, when I responded to it, the original commenter, who was a mutual, actually blocked me. And so then I went into this strange, like, huh, that's weird. And I was just thinking about like the need for nuance and conversation, especially in discussions on topics that are complex and deep and that have like a lot of gray areas. And I think these are important conversations to have, especially as spiritualists and people who dabble in different modalities, because the truth is there's no practice that is completely benign. Every single body of knowledge has some disturbing roots and disturbing people who have practiced it. If you look into astrology, if you look into tarot, if you look into really practically any spiritual avenue, you're going to find bad actors, you're going to find charlatans, you're going to find really fucked up ideologies and a lot of white supremacy baked into spirituality, especially in New Age circles and others. And so that's something that we need to be really discerning about, and to have, and the way we get discerning about that is having conversations about it and having open dialogues, and dialogues where we can approach the conversation with nuance and make space for the complexity of these things. And so that's basically what my stance was. And then the blocking was actually a good kind of little trigger for me, because it showed me a way that I used to operate, which was that I would kind of like shut down discourse when I thought I had found something wrong with someone, or they had made a mistake that made it easy for me to categorize them as bad. And it's very fixed, it's a very fixed approach, and I'm a very fixed person via my chart. And so it's something that I've had to like really grow from and kind of like grow through and out of. And I was really proud of myself and I had like a few, like two or three different conversations of this nature on different topics just today. It just happened to be a day where there were a lot of perspectives that were flowing around and a lot of need for kind of opening up to different perspectives. And I didn't feel that tightness that I used to feel when someone's perspective challenged mine, or when I was wrong and had to like make amends or take accountability for something, which I did actually, because I made a mistake in a post that I shared yesterday that could be read as harmful. And so I corrected myself on Threads and was like, okay, all of this is getting so much easier to do, to like navigate as a human. And that stuff can be complex, especially in the world we live in, where there's a lot of fear of being attacked and being like, wrongly characterized or whatever, if you make a gaffe, or if you have kind of a fucked up belief that needs overturning, but you're not given the space to do that as a human. And it's something that can be tough, especially in leftist circles, is that there is like a lot of rigidity at times where you don't often have the space to be a human who's flawed and who has evolving beliefs. And I think a lot of that is kind of leftover dogma that comes through from religious programming and capitalist programming. And a lot of people, when they start becoming radicalized, will kind of take with them some of the more dogmatic beliefs around like punishment, like corporal, carceral kind of approach to society. And then that gets embedded in our dialogues with one another. And unfortunately, that starts becoming a part of the new world that we're trying to create together. And so it's just stuff that was swimming in my brain today on this star day. And that feels very Aquarian, right? Like Aquarius is a sign that's known for its ability to practice healthy detachment and sometimes unhealthy detachment. But like, it's a sign that can see the big picture and that can back up and kind of see the networks of life and meaning and take it all in. And there's a sort of brilliance to Aquarian energy in its capacity to kind of hold space for the whole and to think about the collective and to think about the sort of like consequences of maybe small choices or big choices and the ways that those can trickle through humanity. And that's one way that I think Aquarian energy is very connected to water, because we think about like the way that river systems flow into one another. And that's whenever I think about Aquarius being connected to like the circulatory system in the body and the way that poison or cancer or, different toxins can flow from one part of our body to another. Similarly, I often connect Aquarian energy to like river systems that connect different bodies of water together that provide our source of water. And so Aquarius can be attuned to the fact that if someone starts polluting over here, that can have collective consequences, because those pollutants can flow into a collective source of water and impact and poison many people. And that's just, for me, that always comes through. And then I love that the star is often not in this case today, although it actually looks like it now that I'm really looking at it. And I'll speak to the card in a little bit. But Aquarius is also known as the water bearer. That's its symbol. And although it's an air sign, there is this cup, this like enclosure that it creates for water to flow, or for connection to flow, or whatever, use, fill in the blank with whatever symbolism comes up for you. But the star often features someone who's kneeling by the water. And I think it's such a beautiful connection, Aquarius and the star. And it's one that didn't come to me intuitively when I first started working with the tarot, but that really evolved and became so clear over time. And so anyway, all of that stuff came up before I even sat down for my practice. And I was like typing madly on my phone while I was like peeing in the morning, like before I even did yoga or like any of my shit. And so I was pretty plugged in, which, online Aquarius, like there's something there too. And but you know what? It was okay. Like my nervous system wasn't going bonkers. I was feeling pretty calm. I even posted some stuff that was like a little bit more, maybe not provocative, but like a little controversial. And I felt so much more calm about that than I usually would. And it was good. And then when I sat down for my exercise, I got this vision of me standing on the moon. And at first I was like putting a flag on the moon, like as if I was, part of the moon landing. And that was a little weird for me. I was like, oh, I don't like this. Like, I don't want to like colonize the moon. But there was something there about like charting new territory. And then again, if you're on the moon, you can see the solar system from a different angle and gain this new perspective and potentially see like Earth. And that has me thinking about that sort of, again, like detached perspective. Like, what would things look like if we were looking at Earth from the moon? How would that change our perspective of our home planet and the way we would like to care for it and the way we would like to connect with one another if we can zoom out in that way? And I was talking to an Aquarius person the other day, and they were describing how they often will do that sort of like backing out exercise where they like imagine themselves zooming out into the solar system. And I thought that was really cool and so Aquarian. And it's something I practice myself often, not zooming into the solar system, but more like getting a bird's eye view of my own situation. And it's really freaking helpful. I have been doing it for years, but then I'll forget about it. But it's one of the more powerful and simple exercises I find that helps me gain perspective when I'm feeling like I'm staring at life through like a wormhole. And instead, what I'll do is I'll actually imagine myself sort of like up in the corner of the room that I'm in, just kind of looking down and observing myself. And it tends to, with a bit of detachment, offer a lot of really powerful perspective, because you don't have your head like shoved into it. You don't have your nose in the shit. You're not like looking at it so up close that you can't take in the whole picture. And it really helps. It really helps me, at least. So maybe that's helpful for someone out there who's needing a little perspective, just a little zoomy out. So that led me to our actual question and our tarot exercise. And I'm going to pull up my notes because there was a lot today. So when I sat down after opening the records this morning, I saw myself in a cave. And I was circling this cave with a lantern and sort of like lighting up the walls and seeing hieroglyphics and like these ancient drawings and scribbles and marks and language on the walls. And it felt like I was accessing this ancestral deep wisdom, which can be a very sort of, Akashic Records experience, but that's not an image that I recall ever getting before. Often when I open the records, I'll see like an ocean or a garden or a vast library, but this is the first time that I've had such a clear ancestral image come through. And it reminded me of the little like Headspace video. They do these like little mini videos that kind of share like soft calming lessons each day, and they're really fun, and sometimes I'll watch them. And today it was a bookbinder who uses this like ancient tool, this like bone tool, to create the binding of books that take about 150 hours to create a piece. And I was so blown away by that like there are people who are creating books by hand and spending about 150 hours to create a book. And how fucking beautiful is that? Like, it was really stunning to me to witness this woman put so much care and incredible skill into this work that she's doing, and to the presence that she cultivated with that, and also the usage of these ancient tools. She said that bone tool is one of like the oldest tools known to man. And it was just so cool to watch her work and to watch the incredible artistry. Like, unbelievable. She would read these books and then she would create, the art for the cover intuitively and tune into the imagery and the meaning, and she would read the whole thing and then create this gorgeous handmade cover for these books, hand bound, doing everything like rhythmically. And she described how bookbinders are said to need more precision than surgeons, and that once you develop the depth of skill needed, it can become a very, very meditative practice. And I think that's so true for most forms of art and most crafts and work that we do with our hands, is that once you become really, really skilled, it can become so intuitive that you can kind of go into this meditative or dream state where it feels like you're just operating on a different wavelength. And I think there's actually a name for that type of brain state, but I don't know it offhand. And so like, again, that feels so Aquarian somehow, like this ability to like cultivate this incredible skill, but then also to sort of lose yourself in it in like a really pleasurable way. And Aquarius is a sign that can be known for dissociative habits, dissociating into the mind, into ideas, into the ether. And that feels like this sort of productive, healing form of dissociation, is like the way that we lose ourselves in a craft or in a hobby or in art, in creation. So really juicy. That brought me into our question, which really hit me hard. It was, what do I want? And I sort of sat there like stilled by this question, and then frustrated with myself for how kind of immobilized I felt by such a seemingly simple but like not easy question. What do I want? I suddenly felt this fear and this anxiety around naming my desires out loud, because I felt in some way like I didn't deserve them, or maybe that's not even what it was, but I think a little bit, a feeling of deservingness or not deservingness. And also just a sense of, I guess, fear that if I name something out loud that I want and then it doesn't happen, am I setting myself up for heartbreak? Am I setting myself up for disappointment? But the star is a card that's about hope. And in order to have hope, we often have to have a vision. I should say, in order to have practical hope and generative hope, we need to have a vision to hope for. We need to see possibilities. And again, the star and Aquarius, two archetypes that help us see possibilities after the destruction of the tower, where we've been returned to our roots. And the beauty of that destruction is that then we're given a chance to build anew and to do so more authentically. When we're reduced to like our absolute foundation, it's really only up from there. And we get to be more intentional. I keep adding extra syllables to my words tonight. I'm tired. We get to be intentional. When we're reduced to our base, we get to be intentional about how we rebuild. And that is part of the beauty of the tower, is that it clears a lot of the junk. It clears a lot of the stuff out of our lives that needs to go so that we can recreate our future. And if you've been through tower moments, you know that that's a major phase of healing, is when you can start imagining what's next and start actually putting one foot in front of the other. And the star gives us that. It gives us the hope, it gives us the vision, or at least it helps us find that vision and to actually believe that it could be real. And hope, while complicated as a thing, and a lot of people have a lot of big feelings about hope, but hope keeps us alive. Hope keeps us moving and grooving and working towards something, because we believe deep down that there's a possibility it can happen. And if we don't believe that, then we're not going to work toward it. We might just throw up our hands and give up. And so hope is essential in healing. And it is a beautiful moment when we can let go of the fear or the fearful parts of us, or at least quell the fearful parts of us that say it's too dangerous to hope, it's too radical to hope, it's too scary to hope. When we can ease up on those parts, we can truly open up to the expansiveness that's in front of us. And so, again, I had trouble with this question at first, and I heard some strange answers. At first, I was like, no more lies. And then I heard to feel powerful. And then I heard, I want to return to source knowledge, to ancestral wisdom, to my spiritual roots, and to feel really deeply connected to lineage. And then I heard space. I heard to disrupt. I want to disrupt. I heard revolution, and I heard answers. And I've been craving answers about a lot of different things in life. And so that last one kind of hit, and I was like, oof, yeah, I want answers. But as I was exploring all of this, I was also getting a lot of imagery simultaneously. Like I kept seeing river water flowing over rocks, like as if I was looking at one patch of a river where the rocks were kind of like rising out of the water, and just watching the water like gently flow over these rocks, and how beautiful and meditative that was. And again, brings me back to like river systems and water systems. And then just like a lot more of, different, like I saw water flowing through my throat and sort of clearing out my energy. And I was also feeling the need to do a visualization to kind of help clear out my energy. I often get like a lot of stuff around my back and need to kind of like expand my energy out of my back so that I can rid myself of any like attachments that are holding me back, or just, vibes that are kind of stuck on me. And so that's energetic hygiene stuff. And again, very Aquarian, very star. And all of this was coming through before I actually looked at the card. And that was fascinating, because then when I actually did, I saw that this star, which I'd forgotten what was actually on the card, I realize now kind of looks like a river. And from this perspective, where I'm looking at it from a different angle, it almost looks like kind of a fish that's like swimming upstream. And it's not at all a fish. It's actually like a crystal with this like silver orb attached to it and then flames coming off of it. And I mean, it kind of looks like sperm too, which is funny. But it's like pointing down toward me or toward you. And it feels like it's either like piercing into the core of the earth or, again, like really putting in a lot of effort to swim upstream. And that fire is blazing and keeping it going. And that fire feels like the spirit that believes in the self and that believes in the whole, that believes that life will do some lifing for us and help us figure things out. And that belief that things will be okay. And so when I actually looked at that, I was like, okay, like it's passionate, but I wasn't getting like a strong emotional connection to the card. But then when I really looked at the crystal and thought about it like as this return to depth and center, I suddenly saw this ritual taking place around a fire, and it felt very ancestral out of nowhere. Suddenly I was like, oh, they're here. The ancestors are here. And it reminded me of this line that I've heard a couple times where it's like, if you're feeling, I'm going to butcher this and I don't even know the source, so apologies for that, but it's like, imagine all of your ancestors walking behind you as you move, and the amount of power and confidence that that can give you to just know that your ancestors are walking behind you. Like literally visualize yourself with your whole lineage walking behind you to support you. And even if you have a complicated relationship with your family, this is still something you can do. And ancestral healing can really help remedy that. But like that visualization is so potent for me and really strikes me whenever I think about it. Like they are right behind me. They are walking with me. They have my back. And so affirmations like that might be valuable for you if you're listening to this and connecting with star energy today. But then what happened was interesting. Like as I was doing that, then I suddenly got this image of myself being stabbed in the back. And I get this a lot. Like I've experienced a lot of betrayal from like lovers and friends and family. And so it's a sensitive thing for me, betrayal and lies and all sorts of deception. And so I'll often get this image of being stabbed in the back when I get into an energetic space and I'm doing like energy work or visualization, and it'll come out of nowhere, like an intrusive thought, like, oh, I'm stabbed in the back suddenly. And so I mentioned like the back is a place where I feel a lot of attachment often. And so I spent some time doing some energy work on myself and some visualization and some affirmations to just like remove any of the bullshit that's attached to me. So from there, I'm going deep today. So from there, I pulled a couple oracle cards, and I got abundance and reflection. And reflection is lovely. We see someone who is looking in like an, I don't know if that's an oyster shell or what, but there are actually two shells that are on both of these cards, which is really cool to get more water imagery coming through. And both of them have like jewelry and like a necklace or something that's within a shell. Abundance is self-explanatory. It's about like being in gratitude for what we already have and appreciating all of the abundance that exists in our life and trusting that more blessings are on their way. And then reflection is more about self-reflection and kind of doing an honest exercise with yourself where you really check in and ask some big, hard questions. And guess what one of those questions was? What do I want? And so I got confronted with this question again and was like, oh my God, not again. But it was so good. And I ended up pulling tarot cards for each question. And I'm going to read them aloud to you in case you would like to do this as a tarot spread too, because I think they're good questions and they're big questions that can feel overwhelming. But if you want to do a tarot spread or if you want to just go for it intuitively, it might be cool. So the questions are: 1, who am I really? 2, what do I want? 3, what am I avoiding? 4, what am I afraid of? 5, what am I grateful for in this life? And 6, what are my gifts that I would like to share with the world? So Very Aquarian questions. Let's zoom out and get back to basics while also seeing the big picture here. And I got some interesting answers. I got the 10 of Wands for who am I really? And I was like, yeah, I'm like a tired fighter and I often overwork myself. And that's something I'm working to shift as we go through these eclipses in my 6th house and my 12th house. There's a lot of change happening there in terms of my relationship to my work. And it was a good reflection because I was like, this is who I'm choosing to be right now. And yes, capitalism is choosing for me, but also like I get to choose to make things easier on myself. For what do I want? I got the 9 of Wands. And so one wand was removed. And I was back to being in this place of resilience and faith, but also like exhaustion. And the 9 of Wands is a wounded warrior card. And so what I heard was like, I want ease. I want ease, but I also want to keep going. So how can I adjust my path? How can I adjust my practices so that I experience more ease, but can also sustain it and keep going? And they're, self-sustaining. Like the more ease you feel often, the easier it is to sustain a pace and a path, as opposed to burning out, which is a very real risk for me and with the 9 of Wands and the 10 of Wands. For what am I avoiding? I got strength and I heard your fear. And then for the next question, which is what am I afraid of? I got the 2 of Cups, which is love and connection and being seen and witnessed and mirrored and held. And I talked about this a little bit in, I think it was the Devil episode, maybe. Sometimes how I bristle at connection or intimacy if I feel like really wanted or like really liked. And that shifted in a big way even more today, where I felt like really receptive to being cared for and liked and adored. And it's something I've been working on for a long time that it felt really good. So that seeing that though, like what am I afraid of? 2 of Cups was kind of, I felt a little bit dragged by the tarot, TBH. I was like, all right, bitch, like fine, I hear you. I need to work on this even more and work on opening up to receiving. And then for what am I grateful for in this life? I got the Chariot, which felt like I'm grateful for the momentum that I've been gifted and the momentum I've gained. I'm really grateful for the energy of my spirit, of my body, of the mobility that I have, that I live with, and my ability to, move through this life with a body, and with my senses, and to get to experience life, and the courage that I've been gifted, the courage and the direction that I've been gifted, which has really kind of crystallized in the past few years alone. I went through, up until my late 20s, feeling very out to sea in terms of my work and my career and very uninspired, and having work that I truly would do in a heartbeat in a moneyless world where we didn't have to like make a bunch of money in order to survive. I would do this work in a heartbeat if I made no money off of it because it's so fulfilling to me. And that is something I always wanted for myself because I'm not motivated by money in the same way that I don't know, maybe I'm motivated in that I need it to survive and I need it to live well. And I want money. I want abundance, which was my other oracle card. I want abundance and I want to feel really well resourced so that I can show up in this world with some level of ease and security and offer from a full cup and be a part of community while also being like individually resourced and cared for and feeling well. And so that's something that's also hard for me to acknowledge at times because of my own money wounds and my own shit. Growing up with not much money at all and growing up around a lot of people that had a lot of money. I may have mentioned this already, but I grew up in one of the wealthiest like suburb areas of California, of Southern California. And it was mostly because my mom wanted us to get into the school districts. And we were fortunate when one of our like not blood relatives but close family friends left my mom some money and she was able to buy a house within the area. We eventually lost the house because she was laid off from her job and it was just not affordable. But like my point, my point is that, I experienced a lot of ups and downs with finances, and my dad was very poor. And so I moved through this feeling of kind of having and then not having, and comparatively having very little compared to my peers and the people that I grew up around who were often quite wealthy. So it gave me a lot of perspective, and I'm really grateful for that perspective because it also, I think, helped me to not grow into an asshole. Not that money makes you an asshole or that it inherently corrupts, but like I easily could have gone down that path had I had much more than I did have as a kid. And I wish we had more, I guess. I wish I have more in the future. I hope for more. Money has been a struggle for my whole life, and I look forward to a day when I don't have to freak out at the end of every month and try to figure out how I'm going to pay rent or how to put food on the table or whatever, pay health insurance. Like all of these are things that I deal with on a regular basis. And I had a conversation with a coach that I worked with who's wonderful, Kate Moore. I'll drop her link in the show notes. I had a conversation with her today about this and like my own feelings of martyrdom when it comes to money and being like self-sacrificial and underpricing my services or undervaluing them or like overgiving because I feel some guilt about my pricing. And so it's all stuff that's like Aquarian, right? Because like I want to make my services accessible, and also I'm a human who needs to figure out how to live under capitalism. And I'm single. I pay for everything myself, and I have a lot of responsibilities, and I do a ton of free work, like creating free content, creating this podcast, running my Discord server, creating readings for YouTube and social media, doing weekly tarot scopes, writing a newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks, and much more. And so a ton of my work is actually free or completely or very low cost. Like my Patreon is low cost, my monthly events are low cost, but it's not sustainable right now. And so part of my work with the star today felt like, how can I rework this so that I'm supporting myself, so that I'm resourced, and so that I'm not like growing resentful of imaginary people who are expecting me to hand over all of this work for free, which is the notion that and I think a lot of creators get in our heads, is that they're like hungry, like people who just want to devour and don't want to reciprocate at all. And that's been an experience, but it's also an experience that has manifested in part because I expected it to. And then I grew resentful. And so I think like there's a whole kind of paradigm shift that I feel happening in my work, like today alone, with all of these different things that are coming up, first with the conversation about the records, and then with the money stuff and the like creating systems to support the work that I do in this world is essential. And Aquarius is a sign that can help me do that. And the star is a card that can help me vision that. And I know I'm going really long here, but I'm really excited about this stuff. So my final question, I got completely off track, is where or what are my gifts that I would like to share with the world? And I got the 8 of Wands. And the 8 of Wands for me is a card of truth and momentum. And for my like little intuitive exercise today, it was to free draw for 5 minutes with the prompt in mind. What do I want? And I ended up drawing this like funny thing where it looked like almost like hanging lights or like ornaments coming down from the top, and then like waves at the bottom, and then just in big block letters it said alive, and it had a bunch of arrows shooting to the right from the word alive. And it just felt like there was this life and this momentum. And I'll post it on Instagram if anyone wants to see my little drawing. But I felt life and I felt momentum from that. And that reminded me of this question of like the gifts I would like to share. 8 of Wands, like these wands that are flying through the air and helping other people gain momentum and move toward their vision. The 8 of Wands is a Sagittarius card, which is a very visionary sign in many ways, being ruled by Jupiter. And so I felt this like feeling of needing to have a vision and needing to share that vision and needing to step into a role of visionary, which I feel really awkward saying out loud, but like it's there. It's something that I'm cultivating within myself, even if it's just within my own life. Like being a visionary within my own life and leading with integrity and honesty is a huge part of the work that I seek to do on this planet, and helping other people explore hard truths with grace and kindness and nuance and compassion. It's something that's very important to me, and I think having hard conversations and doing so from a place of love and moving out of black and white thinking, moving out of unnecessary hostility, and moving toward connection and shared understanding. And that brings me back to the original message today, or the first message I shared about like the need for nuance, especially in progressive spaces and like leftist spaces. We're not going to get anywhere if we're at each other's throats and if we're seeking failure in each other. It just brews dissension, and it brews, or I should say it brews division, not dissension, although maybe dissension too. But it brews division, and it is divisive for us to be at each other's throats instead of identifying the collective causes and the shared visions that we want to work toward. We all have our own separate identities and our own roles to play on this planet. But if we can't work in concert with each other, then we're not really going anywhere. And so again, it's star thinking and it's Aquarius thinking to ask ourselves, how can I play my unique role in the symphony of the whole in order to add my notes to that symphony? Because my notes are needed, my notes are essential, but I'm also not the whole picture and I can't do it alone. And we need to band together in order to create a vision that's sustainable and practical for all of us and that supports the whole. So big picture stuff. I love this card. It's so great. And so my gifts that I wanted to share with the world were around being like a truth teller and being someone who can help hold that vision and help look at the big picture and support people as they kind of unpack their own outdated ideas and move through mental blockages and emotional blockages, and offer that sort of healing support to folks at an individual level, but also at a collective level. So, what does that bring me to? Where do we end here? My song beautifully was Rain Makes the River. And oh my God, you guys, this is by Jazzanova. I wasn't very familiar with the song, and I had definitely never seen the music video. You have to watch this music video. It is fucking beautiful. It is so cool. It's animated, and the story that's told is just so gorgeous. And I think you'll find a lot of symbolism from the star in this really beautiful story that is absolutely an image of hope and happy endings. And I got news of like a foretold happy ending today from my guides that really uplifted my spirit in a big way. And then that vision and that hope led into a really important conversation that I had that clarified what it is that I want. And I was thinking about like my vision for my future and that desire I have to live in more of like a collective of sorts with community close by. My desire to have a non-monogamous relationship with a primary partner who adores me and who I adore in turn, and to have that sort of reciprocity and commitment while also having the expansiveness to explore and to connect with other people and to not feel restricted by the convention of monogamy or by the convention of marriage, even perhaps. I might get married. I don't know. TBH or TBD. But yeah, just a lot of questioning and a lot of like really beautiful, hopeful answers pouring through that gave me a clearer vision of what I'm moving toward and what it is that I want. And damn, it feels so fucking good to identify what I want. Like, oh my God, that's something that often gets stolen from us at some points in our life when we feel really discouraged and we can't see a horizon. We can't imagine things being any different or looking any different or feeling any different. And just that like kernel of hope can go such a long way. So I hope you are able to access hope. I hope that it sustains you and buoys you. And I hope that you're able to plug into a personal vision that also plugs into a collective vision. And if you don't, maybe you could find an Aquarian to help you with it. All right, y'all, go watch that music video if you're inclined. This is the longest episode ever, and it makes sense and it feels right that it is. I don't think there's anything else to share. If you do like want to attend my Mars lab, which I mentioned in the last episode, or find me anywhere, you can find all my links in my link tree, by the way, which is always in the show notes. And that's it. You can become a patron if you want to access more exclusive content and monthly predictive readings and all of that stuff. And of course, you can always book a reading with me. All right. Love to you all. Good night.